everyone, welcome to the In the Frame podcast. I'm Luke, and today we have the author of the new book, The Freelancer Bible, working in the screen sector, a mentor, a trainer, a producer, an all-round entrepreneur, and amazing lady, Alison Grade. Hello.
Hi Luke. It's great to be here. Lovely to chat to you.
Lovely to chat to you. How are you doing? How are things?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a funny time at the moment with coronavirus in that people have got more time on their hands. So I'm actually finding myself to be really busy helping people think about how to be a better freelancer when they come out the other side of this and what they want to do. So It's just interesting times in that respect.
It really is. And so today we're kind of just chatting to you about your new book and the incredibleness that is inside it for young filmmakers. And so because In the Frame is all about supporting young filmmakers and to really equipping them with knowledge from experts. And so before we begin, remember to subscribe, ring the bell, follow us on Facebook and Instagram and such. And yeah, let's get into it. And so Alison, how did you start off in your career?
So I was at university. I went to Cambridge and I read social sciences, and I came out of there with a 2-1 in management studies. And I took one look inside the freshers fair, although not for the graduate fair, the milk round thing, to see what jobs were going. I took one look inside that and went, this is not for me. I don't fit in this place whatsoever. And knew at that point very quickly that I really wanted to give working in TV a go. I was drawn to it. It was in the genes. I just wanted to give it a go. And I thought, well, I can always get a proper job later on, but I never managed to get a proper job basically. So I just worked my way up. I wrote to companies, I got in front of them, and I tried to make a good impression and got my first job on a deferred payment feature film, which was many years ago. It was a way of getting feature films made where you got expenses only, and if the film recouped, then you would make money. So I don't really believe that I'd ever see a penny from it, but it was a way to get started. It was a summer break, so I did it, and from there I then networked my way onto the next company, who were the people writing the music for the for the film, and at that point they were also trying to get into production, so they needed someone in the office. Then they sublet part of their office to an animation company, who then hired me, and so I just networked my way through the industry, getting more responsibility and more involvement, and I very much took the production management route all the way through that.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like that's a common thread with everyone. It's a common thread with me, as I started off with one person and just kind of gradually built up as that I was introduced to other people. From like my first contact was with Pip, as you know, and I worked with him first, and then I got contact with Drew, who I now work with, and I got contacts into further things from that, and it just kind of snowballs, doesn't it?
Freelancing is a networked industry. You know, we're always relying on our networks. Like, I'll have my go-to people for doing stuff that I do now, and if they're not free, I'll be okay, well, so who do you work with, or who do you know in this field? So I'm always doing that kind of networking and reaching out through those networks. So that's why it works, because we trust our contacts, the people we respect and trust, we trust their recommendations. And so that works well when you've got some traction, but as you know, when you're first starting out, that can be that first hardest hurdle to get over. But I think we're going to talk about that in a minute, aren't we?
We are, yeah. How has your role changed since that starting to be a producer and production management side of things? How has your freelancing career changed over time since those beginnings?
I think just technically, in terms of how I freelance, when I was working in the early days of film and TV production, I'd be getting freelance contracts that were fixed term, that could be anything from 3 weeks or 3 months up to sort of 9 months. So I was working primarily for one company, doing one role, really busy, really intense, but just doing that one role for a fixed period of time. And it was up to me to make sure that I had the next piece of work lined up afterwards, or be prepared for a quiet time. Whereas now I kind of describe it as working in parallel. So I've got lots of clients at the same time. I don't work for any client exclusively. So I can do things like for an hour, for 2 hours a day, or I can do a project where someone says, will you do 10 days for us over the next 3 months? So it's very, very different. I'm multitasking across lots of projects now and doing different work. So and they're all valid models of freelancing. It just depends on what skill you're bringing into the equation, and that companies need you for.
Yeah. And so we've been talking about being a freelance, and one of the incredible reasons why you're here among all your amazing talents is you have this incredible new book that you gave me a wonderful copy like 3 weeks during lockdown too, and I've been reading it, and it's been absolutely incredible. And because I started freelancing officially in about 2017 after doing a few jobs freelance wise, and then starting an apprenticeship with Pip, who I now work for on a consistent basis. And I just sort of realized in that state was like, well, freelancing's the only way to really work in filmmaking. And so I'll just do that, and I'll just start working in that way. But then this book has really like pointed out like, oh, this is how this works and this is how this works. And so just like to dive kind of into freelancing, how you manage things. And so to start us off, what is the difference between being a freelancer and then being an employee?
Yeah, it's really important to understand that. So when you're a freelancer, it's up to you to find work and get yourself work to do. So if you're in a job, you've got a boss, and it's their responsibility to give you work. If there isn't enough work for them to give you, they've either got to come up with something or go through a process and make you redundant. So the responsibility as an employee is just to do the work that you're given to do. As a freelancer, you've got to find the work, you've got to do the work, but you're wearing all these different hats because you're the CEO of your own little business. You're the marketing director, you're the finance director. You've got to play all of these roles. You've got to invoice people, you've got to make sure you collect the money. So you can think of freelancing as being like running a small business, if you like. You've got to work in your business doing the work that you do, but you've also got to work on it and find the work, get paid, as I've just said. When you're an employee, your only task really is to work at your job. You don't have to worry about those other pieces. So there's very different in terms of that mindset. And then on a practical level, as a freelancer, quite often you're paid inclusive of all your taxes and national insurance. So you'll probably have to do a tax return at the end of the year, probably get an accountant to do that. So you have to put money aside and make sure that you're doing that. You're going to have your own laptop, probably your own equipment. As an employee, it's up to the employer to give you the equipment that you need to provide you with a desk and all of that. So you've got very, very different places, very, very different expectations on both. What I love about freelancing and what makes me completely unemployable is the autonomy that it gives me. I can work at any time of day that I feel like. Yes, I have to respond to clients' needs, but I can make my work fit around my schedule and the best times of day for me to work. As an employee, I have to do what my boss tells me, and that's the bit that I always struggle with.
I struggle with that bit too. I like having that kind of agency. And I remember doing a bit of work for a school once and being incredibly confused about when I lost 20% of my it was something like 20 or 15% of my invoice. And I was like, what's this? It's like, well, that's just emergency tax. It's like, I'd never experienced that, not going through an employment scheme before. And it was just like, I realized how I kind of take for granted being able to have just to collect and do my tax returns at the end of the years and funnel out money that way. And so what would be the challenges for someone? So I started when I was like 18 or 18. I think I might have been 17 actually. What are the challenges for starting out freelancing when you're young? Because I've had friends, because I've been and managed it, but I've had friends who've tried and it hasn't worked out, and they've gone into like TV jobs, or they've gone back to university and such. What would be what are the challenges growing from there?
Yeah, I think, well, when I think about the different ways that people freelance, I kind of think it's really useful to look at I-shaped people and T-shaped people, because I-shaped people are people who have a great big depth of experience, and those are your traditional freelancers. And particularly that's relevant to film and TV, because if you're going to be a DOP, you're going to have a huge long eye with just that depth of experience, and the only thing you'll do is be a DOP because you'll be hired in just to do that kind of work. But how do you get there? You've got to climb the ladder and get that first job as that camera team runner or whatever it might be, or camera assistant. And you've got to go up those steps and get that longer and longer eye. So getting that first step in can often be the really hardest step, because you don't always have the networks. You don't know always that that's exactly what you want to be doing and that kind of thing. So those first steps are difficult, but I think people underestimate the networks that they really have and don't really realize they're as big as they are. Because if you want to get into film and TV, the chances are you've done some kind of work in that area already. And I don't necessarily mean paid work or employment, but I mean you might have done a course at school, at college, at university. You might have done a camp or something. You'll have done something that makes you realize that you want to work in that industry. So the chances are you'll know at least half a dozen people, if not more, who are already some way connected to the industry. So they're in your network. So talk to them, write to them, find out how they can introduce you to. So leveraging your networks is all about reaching out to the people you know, who you know people within the industry. So you could have a friend who works in the industry, who knows people that work in the industry. So talk to them. I'm really passionate about this. I know I want to do this. This is what I want to do. Please, will you introduce me? And so you're just building on those networks, and you have to be quite resilient and at the beginning, but also you want to be really focused, because if I'm on the receiving end of that pitch from someone who's trying to get into the industry, I want them to be really clear on what they want to do and why they want to do it. Now, that doesn't mean you only have to have one answer, because let's face it, if you're starting out, you might be willing to do anything, but telling me you're willing to do anything doesn't help me as an employer or someone looking to. I want someone, if you're coming to me, you've got to understand the sort of projects that I work on and where I might have a need. So the films that I've made in the last few years have been live to cinema, kind of OBs and online. So I'm often looking for day runners or something like that to help me, or maybe someone to do some project management. So you know, hopefully your contact who knows me will know that that's what I do and say, right, you're talking to Alison, this is what you're after. Now, you might have other ambitions, but you know how this piece of experience is going to help you get to the next stage. So it's about being strategic and leveraging your networks in that way.
Yeah, amazing. And how would you recommend someone starts building those networks? And like, is there places people could go to kind of find these places?
I think you have to sit down literally with a pen and paper or a spreadsheet and think about all the people you've actually interacted with and got anything to do it. So if you've been to university, all of your tutors will have some connection with the industry. They're there to help you. So reach out to them. You probably had guest lecturers come in. I bet they've all put their emails up and bet nobody's contacted them, because people don't. So you've got all of those people that you can write to. If you've been to college, you've got those people. If you've just been working with some friends, so you've got people in your networks already. And then think about your friends, your family. You know, if you're young, maybe your parents or your parents' friends know people. It's amazing how many people come out of the woodwork when you just start having those conversations. Just start talking to people, explaining what you want to be doing. Do you know anyone? Have you got someone I can talk to? Because everyone goes, oh yeah, I've got a friend who works in that. You know, so just start leveraging that. So that's one aspect, and I appreciate that's not going to work for everybody. But then you can look at, say, where the West Midlands, where I'm based, and as you know, you're based here too. You've got the Birmingham Film Festival, you've got the Producers Forum, you've got Crew Birmingham with a runners group, you've got the RTS, you've got Film Birmingham, you've got lots of different organisations that all do events and network things and bring people together. So go to places where there are events happening, join the conversation, go to the screenings of the short films, go to the talks and the masterclasses, and just start talking to people and finding where people who you want to meet hang out. And I think even during coronavirus, you can do that. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the uptake on Screen Skills website, but they're doing free seminars every day. They're doing 5 a day for an hour each, and they're getting oversubscribed every day. So what a great place to join that conversation, learn more about the industry, listen to some interesting voices, reach out to them afterwards. I was at your talk. It was really interesting. Would you give me 15 minutes of your time? Could we have a chat? But you want to be really strategic about those people that are going in the direction that you want to go in. Maybe they're a couple of steps ahead of you, that kind of thing.
You mentioned in your book about, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like everyone can kind of maintain like 150 contacts. And then so there's always 1 degree away of people that can become your customers that you can get to know, and you can talk about filmmaking. You might know someone, you might know someone else and such.
Yeah.
And I think that's
That's exactly the point. It's Dunbar. It's known as Dunbar's number, and he maintains that you can maintain stable social relationships with up to 150 people. So if I've got 150 people in my network and you've got 150 people in yours, then that's 22,500 people at 1 degree of separation. So that's exactly the point. Our networks are much bigger than we perceive them to be. So take some time to think about that. But because they're bigger, you want to be really strategic and really focused on who do you want to meet, where do you want to get to.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've seen stuff like Facebook groups who meet on Zoom to talk about filmmaking stuff and logistics and such. And so it's amazing how filmmaking communities always come together. And I think the thing I've always taken for granted that I need to not take for granted in the future is the fact that Producers Forum always did monthly meetups, and that filmmaking viewers always had a day where they'd come together and to chat about filmmaking and kind of grow from there, which has always been so stunning.
Yeah.
From a kind of more practical view, you talked earlier about kind of having that kind of full-based kind of work, like you work for a month here, work for a month there. And I remember reading in your book and chuckling that you used to do like month-long works and then be like, immediately first thing I do is book a holiday at the end of it to kind of recover. And I was like, I can so relate to that, because I've just come off the back of 2 feature films, and after both of them I took like 2 weeks off just to recuperate and to rest before then immediately going back into the swing of things. And it reminded me of that whole, when you're freelancing and when you're starting out originally, you feel very, very focused to kind of do as much as you can all the time. And then I found it, and I'm sure, and for everyone I've talked about, that can lead to burnout, that can lead to people really kind of struggling and kind of slowing down. What would your thoughts be, and what's your opinion on kind of work-life balance and kind of managing the two as a freelancer?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, especially, I mean, I don't know when this is being released, but we're recording it in Mental Health Awareness Week. So it's something that's really on my mind at the moment. And I mean, as a production manager, it was a safety valve for me, because by the end of the production, it would often overrun by a week or two for me. So that was really my insurance policy, to know that I had that week and I would be happy to go back in and do some more clear up, but I knew I had an end in sight and it didn't just drift into the next project. So yeah, I mean, it's not just about that, the end of the contract. I think it's really, when you're working in film and TV, it's really intense, and we're in the industry because we love it, and that's the bit where you really have to be careful of your mental health, because you will go above and beyond to deliver for it, and it's expected, it's part of the culture. So you've got to find a way of keeping those boundaries and keeping some downtime for you. And whilst technology and Wi-Fi and smartphones are absolutely brilliant and game changing for the speed at which we can make things happen, they're equally our downfall, in that we're expected to be always on. It's acceptable to not send information out till 9-10 o'clock at night for someone to be ready to respond to at 5-6 in the morning. So it's finding your boundaries and really sticking to them, but in a way that's not disruptive to the production and creates a bad feeling. So it's quite a hard place to be at, and particularly when you're starting out, it's harder to say no. But in the first instance, absolutely health and safety comes first. So if you are scheduled to do a 12-hour day, it is not acceptable to do a 2-hour drive there and a 2-hour drive back. Absolutely, you can say no, and any production that doesn't respect that, you should probably think about walking away from, because that's above and beyond. So it's understanding what is right and fair and reasonable, and also making sure that you mentally step back from being so involved in it. I don't know what you do to switch off. For me, it's having a walk, going and sitting in the garden, doing something with the kids, whatever. For my husband, it's cooking. You've got to find that place where you mentally decompress at the end of each day and at the weekends as well, and not let it take over, because you'll just, like you say, you'll burn out. And I think I would focus more on the strategies during the busy periods, because then the downtime will sort itself out, because you'll already know how to unwind and to take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. So what advice would you give for people starting out? Actually, no, I forgot a question. I remembered it again. You talked about kind of valuing and knowing when to walk away. And you talk about it in your book about kind of when you're trying to value yourself and figuring out how much you should be paid and such. I think as young filmmakers, it's easy just to kind of get swept up in, I'll do a job here, I'll do some job for exposure here, and then not really knowing when to progress level wise into going, right now I'm worth this much, or this is how much I should be worth. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things is not knowing when to walk away. And so is there any red flags or any signs when you of a production you should walk away, either from a kind of like maybe not a monetary point of view, but just from an idea of this doesn't feel good for my mental health, or this doesn't feel good for kind of where I'm at?
Yeah, so I think you've got to understand why you're going into a project, particularly if it's for low or no pay. What are you looking to get out of it? Why are you doing it? And you've got to be able to answer that question really straightly for yourself, and make sure that the person you're working with understands your reason for doing it. So it could be you want that credit as a DOP that you wouldn't get on a 400-person crew, but actually that's the credit that you want, for example. So you want to negotiate that. I will give you this time, in return I want this. Or, you know, you've got a good network of people. The next time you get a paid project, I won't guarantee that I will get fast refusal on that. So that's a bit iffy, because that person may just be a bit of a charlatan and may disappear. You have to make your judgment about that, but you've got to understand why you're going for it. Does it have good enough production values? Have you got creative input that you wouldn't have on a bigger production? So you've got to really understand why you're going into that. And the gray area comes in a way because actually with equipment so accessible these days, employers expect, you know, people working in the industry, I hate to call them employers and I hate to call them jobs, because we're freelancers and we do work, but those people crewing up, I feel like the word freelance jobs is an oxymoron, so I try to really avoid those phrases. So people who are crewing up are always looking, well, what are you doing if you're not actually working in the industry? You've got a side job in a bar or restaurant, whatever it might be, in a supermarket. Are you making content? Are you showing commitment? So that's a place where you and your friends and networks can come together to make your own creative work that showcases the sort of things that you want to do. That's absolutely positively to be encouraged. The difference is when you go into somebody else's project, they've raised some money, they're not paying everybody, that kind of thing. That's when you want to be a bit more cautious about what you're getting out of it and what you get in return. So, you know, it's great to see that the BFI network, for example, will only commission projects where everybody is paid minimum wage as a standard, nothing less, but everybody is paid. So, you know, seeing where you can take that, and, you know, when you're constantly being rung and the phone's ringing off the hook at the price you're charging and you're really stupidly busy, that's the sign you need to put the prices up. And if that's at a point where people are ringing you up for no work, it shows that you've got a good reputation and you should start charging, because word's got out, you're good, you're delivering, that puts the price up. So yeah, a few of them will fall by the wayside, but if you lose half of them and you're paying double, you're working half as hard for twice as much money. So you're winning. So the sign that you need to put your prices up is being too busy. But you've really got to be astute and look out for the signs of people taking advantage because you're new to the industry. But that's where, if you take that step back at the beginning and go, why am I doing this? Where's this going to take me? What's it going to change? If I do this piece of work, how is that going to change my credibility, the other side of it? And if you can't answer that, you've got to think, well, why am I doing this? Is my time better spent in another way?
Amazing. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And so for our final question, thank you so much for coming, because it's been absolutely wonderful as always. What advice would you have for someone starting their freelance journey, what is some of the stuff that you would advise people to not do, and then some stuff that you advise them to definitely look into doing that they might not have thought about before?
Yeah, I think don't go up to people, and it's a bit like I kind of feel like freelancing is a bit like dating. You're looking to build long-term sustainable relationships with people, so you don't want to go up to people with kind of desperate tattooed on your forehead I'll do anything, because I actually don't ever want someone who'll do anything. It's not appealing.
No picking up clients at a bar, that kind of stuff.
Bizarrely, that does work sometimes, but but you want to really focus on why do you, Luke, add value to a production? What are the skills that you bring to the table? Why do I need your services? And that's why do me specifically need your services? So we said earlier, I do these OBs and I need day runners and project management. So if you can fulfill that, then you'll say, I can do this, that, and the other. So that's fine. I might not be the person that you want to pitch to, because you probably don't want to be doing that kind of stuff. But you've got to understand the why. Why do you add value to your client? Why? What problem do you solve for them? What needs do you benefit for them? And how to express that. So why are you valuable? Because most of the time there are lots of people who can do that role. So then it becomes, to a certain extent, around finding people that share the same values as you. So it's like, well, actually, we're all passionate about indie filmmaking, and we spend all of our time watching indie films, and that's what we look for when we're on Netflix, when we go to the cinema, when we're on TV. That's the content that we look for. So we're looking for people who share those values and just can't get enough of that, because we're inside and we share that. And that's where that person would stand out in that community. But if you put them into factual entertainment on TV, they're not going to stand out. They're not going to get the quiz show mentality, for example. So you're looking for those people that share those values to really pitch your why me to. And also, it just comes back to leveraging your networks and really understanding that you've got more people in your network, and then focusing on those that you share the values with, that content that you love, that you understand, that you want to be part of making.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people follow you if they want to learn more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Twitter as @Alison Grade. I'm at Freelance Bible on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm on LinkedIn as both Freelance Bible and Alison Grade. The book is available as on Amazon, hand delivered in mostly. Hand delivered.
Alison hand delivered me, and it's wonderful.
But it's also an audiobook, which I had the pleasure of reading, and an ebook on Amazon. So
that's so cool. I did not know it was an audiobook. That's awesome. There's no excuse not to read it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I would highly recommend this if anyone wants my recommendation. And it's brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Luke.